The glass doors of Nexus Global slid open with a soft hiss, and the entire lobby glowed under the morning light. Polished floors. A semicircle of employees waiting for the arrival of a special guest. Soft chatter, nervous laughter, corporate energy at its peak. Then everything snapped into silence. Because she walked in, a black woman in a navy suit, posture straight, arms folded, gaze steady. No entourage, no badge clipped to her blazer, just presence quiet, heavy, unmistakable. The kind of presence that shifts a room long before the room knows why. Across from her, a man stepped forward, white shirt, gray vest, confident smirk. Daniel Hahn, department manager. He didn't greet her. He didn't ask her name. He simply pointed at her, laughing loud enough for the floor to hear. "Sharon," he barked in Chinese. Then in English, dripping with mockery, "Servant." Behind him, the entire team erupted in supportive laughter, clapping, nodding, enjoying the moment as if watching a comedy skit. Someone whispered, "She must have walked into the wrong building." Another nudged a colleague and added, "Check who I am first, can't even follow protocol." But she didn't move. No flinch, no outrage, no attempt to defend herself. Her eyes held him the way a storm holds lightning contained, deliberate, inevitable. Daniel stepped closer, emboldened by the chorus behind him. "You're blocking the VIP lane," he said sharply. "Step aside. We don't need outside staff wandering around pretending to be important." A circle formed around them, employees forming a ring of humiliation, eager to show loyalty to the manager who believed he was teaching her a lesson. Except he wasn't. He was digging. A young intern standing by the reception desk swallowed hard. He'd seen her name flash across the internal system that morning. A VIP entry. A restricted flag he didn't fully understand. But the fear of speaking out glued his feet to the floor. Daniel pointed again, this time inches from her face. "I said servants wait outside." Her jaw tightened, just barely. A breath controlled, a storm anchored. Before he could speak again, she raised her head slightly slow, precise, regal. And then came the quiet, cinematic beat that splits a story in half. "Before we continue," the narrator's voice drifts in, soft but charged. "Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here." A brief pause. Now, back to her. She unfolded her arms, not in surrender, but in preparation. The room didn't know it yet, but the woman they just called servant was the one person whose name would soon silence the entire building. The lobby hadn't recovered from the first insult when she finally moved just one step. Smooth, controlled. Enough to make the semicircle of employees instinctively straighten their posture as if something in the air had shifted, recalibrated, warned them. But she still hadn't said a word. Her name was Ariana Cole, though no one in Nexus Global knew that yet. They only saw the surface. A woman dressed simply, a leather briefcase at her side, no ID lanyard, no assistant rushing behind her, no corporate display to validate her presence. But every inch of her posture whispered something the room wasn't trained to hear. Power disguised as patience. Authority wrapped in quiet. Daniel mistook the silence for weakness. The team mistook her calm for compliance. That was their first mistake. Ariana's eyes drifted across the shiny marble floor, then to the glass panels reflecting the watching crowd. In the reflection, she could see everything the room believed about her, not through their words, but their body language. The folded arms, the tilted heads, the hushed smirks. The confidence of people who thought they understood the hierarchy here. They didn't. A junior analyst in the back whispered, "Why isn't she saying anything?" His coworker replied, "Because she's scared. Look at her, she's outnumbered." But Ariana wasn't scared. She was measuring the room. She studied Daniel's stance. Shoulders forward, chest puffed. Grin wide, the posture of a man who had never been told he was wrong in a public space. The type who wielded authority like a toy rather than a duty. Then her gaze slid to the group behind him, employees laughing not because they believed he was right, but because aligning with him felt easier than standing alone. Ariana had seen this dynamic before, in boardrooms, at investment pitches, At mergers, where she walked in as the only black woman in the room and left owning the building they tried to keep her out of. Quiet entrance, loud ending. It was practically her signature. Daniel took another step toward her, mistaking the silence for surrender. "You hear me?" he said sharply. "Move. You're in the wrong place." Ariana finally lifted her chin. Not high, just enough. A simple, precise gesture that carried the weight of someone who'd had to lift it 1,000 times before and had learned exactly when to let it drop. The lobby didn't know it yet, but the moment she raised her chin, the balance of the room began to tilt in her direction. Tension gathered in the lobby like humidity before a storm, thick, invisible, impossible to ignore. Daniel sensed the shift, but mistook it for defiance, not danger. He straightened his vest, rolled his shoulders back, and spoke louder, performing for the growing audience. "Unbelievable," he scoffed. "You people think you can just walk into corporate spaces and do whatever you want." A few employees chuckled, relieved he'd said the part they were thinking out loud. Someone muttered, "She probably sneaked in through the employee entrance." Another added, "Security should have flagged her." Yet not a single person asked her name. Ariana watched them, eyes steady, breath even. Every assumption hung in the air like dust caught in a spotlight, visible, ugly, unmistakably familiar. Daniel stepped closer, crowd swelling behind him like a tide of misplaced confidence. "This area is restricted," he said, pointing toward the gold-trimmed path leading deeper into Nexus Global's executive wing. "You don't get to stand here. You don't even look like you belong here." Ariana didn't answer. Her silence wasn't retreat. It was exposure, letting them reveal who they truly were. Behind the receptionist desk, the intern adjusted his glasses with trembling fingers. He could still see her name glowing on the screen. Ariana Cole Priority Clearance Red Access. But Daniel's voice rose again, shaking his courage loose. "Why are you even inside the building?" he scoffed. "Let me guess, lost? Trying to get a job? Deliver a package? Which one?" The more he talked, the more the employees behind him leaned in, emboldened by the cascade. One whispered, "Look at her suit, definitely off the rack." Another laughed, "She's probably here to ask for HR papers." Ariana's jaw flexed for the first time. Not out of anger. Recognition. This wasn't new. Bias rarely came in original packaging. Daniel folded his arms. "If you don't identify yourself right now, I'll have you escorted out. And trust me, they won't be gentle." A ripple went through the crowd, anticipation mixed with cruelty. People love a spectacle as long as they aren't the ones in it. Ariana inhaled once, steady and slow. She wasn't intimidated, just calculating where the next crack in their posture would appear. Because despite all the noise, despite the rising heat of humiliation aimed her way, not a single person had noticed one simple, devastating truth. She hadn't stepped into the wrong place. She had stepped into a place that was about to answer for itself. For a moment, the lobby felt like a stage built for one man's arrogance. Daniel's gestures grew bigger, sharper, like he was conducting an orchestra of mockery behind him. Every smirk, every suppressed laugh, every tilted head joined his rhythm. And then something shifted, not from Ariana, but from the edge of the room. The intern, the one half hidden behind the reception counter, kept staring at the screen glowing in front of him. Her name was still there. Priority Clearance. Red Access. An authorization level he'd only seen once, during a board audit. His throat tightened. He glanced up at Ariana, then back at Daniel, then at the employees circling her like spectators hungry for a takedown. His heartbeat hammered in his ears. He wasn't high-ranking. He wasn't powerful. He was 23, barely 2 months into his internship, and one mistake away from losing the tiny corner of stability he'd scraped together. But justice has a way of tapping the right person at the wrong time. And this was that moment. He swallowed hard. Daniel?" His voice cracked, barely audible. Daniel didn't turn. "Not now," he snapped. "I'm dealing with something." "But—" The intern tried again, forcing more sound through his tightening chest. "I think you should check the system." A few employees turned toward him. Some irritated, some amused. Daniel shot him a look. A warning. "I said not now. Don't interrupt me over some clerical." "It's not clerical." The intern's voice broke, but he didn't back down. "I saw her name. She has clearance. Silence wrapped around the center of the lobby like a tightening rope. A couple of smirks slipped. Someone lowered their phone. Daniel blinked, confused, then irritated, then almost threatened. She doesn't have clearance. Don't be ridiculous. She does. The intern stepped forward fully now, feet trembling but planted. It's flagged red. That's executive level. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Executive? Red level? Her? Daniel scoffed loudly, trying to reclaim the narrative. An intern doesn't get to define access. Step back before you embarrass yourself. But the intern didn't move. He wasn't defending her. He was defending the truth, and for the first time in the entire morning, someone had spoken a sentence that didn't come wrapped in bias. Ariana turned her head slightly, meeting his eyes. Not with relief, not with gratitude, with recognition. Because in every room where injustice thrives, there is always one person who sees it first, and chooses, however quietly, to say something. And that whisper was about to unravel everything the louder voices built. The lobby's air thickened, heavier than polished marble should allow. Because Daniel had heard the intern everyone had, but he chose the one response that would escalate everything. He ignored him. Completely. Daniel took 2 steps forward, closing the distance until he stood so near Ariana that his shadow cut across her shoes. "You think one intern is going to save you?" he murmured, voice low but sharp enough to wound. "Let me make this simple. People like you don't get anywhere near the executive wing, so move. Now." Then he did it. The line no professional should ever cross. He lifted a hand and pointed directly at her forehead, so close his fingertip nearly brushed her skin, a gesture not of authority, but of ownership. A gesture meant to shrink her. The crowd behind him erupted again, not in laughter this time, but in anticipation. They sensed humiliation building, thick and ugly. Her eyes lowered not in fear but in calculation. Her breath deepened, steadying. Her jaw tightened once, twice, as though she were bracing against a wave she had met before. Because she had? Years earlier, Ariana, 19, walking through the back door of a convention center, dressed in a borrowed blazer, clutching her first pitch deck. She remembered the security guard who never checked her badge, never asked her name. He simply blocked her path and said, "Your staff. Go around back. People like you don't present here." The shame had been immediate, sharp, public. She carried that moment like a scar she refused to let fade, not because it hurt, but because it kept her sharp. It kept her building. It kept her moving forward until the world would have no choice but to learn her name. And now here it was again. The same gesture, the same tone, the same dismissal. Only this time, the man pointing at her had no idea he was touching a match to a powder line. Ariana lifted her gaze slowly, the flashback dissolving into present-day clarity. Daniel scoffed at her silence, leaning even closer. "What's wrong? Nothing to say?" Speechless people don't belong in leadership spaces anyway. Behind him, an employee muttered, "He's right. Look at her. She's frozen." But Ariana wasn't frozen. She was done. Done absorbing. Done allowing. Done granting grace to a man who used his title as a weapon. Her voice, when it finally came, was soft, dangerously soft. And the room somehow sensed that softness carried more weight than any shout could. Ariana didn't raise her voice. She didn't even lift her chin higher. She simply shifted her stance, one foot sliding half an inch, grounding her like someone preparing to flip a room without lifting a finger. Then she reached into her blazer pocket. Not fast, not abrupt, just deliberate. Daniel instinctively stepped back, surprised by the tiny, controlled movement proof that even arrogance has reflexes. Ariana pulled out her phone, tapped once, and lifted it to her ear. "Carla," she said softly, as though ordering tea, "not justice. Activate Protocol 11. Those 2 words landed like a fracture running beneath polished marble. The intern's eyes widened. He'd heard rumors of internal protocols, never seen one triggered. Employees glanced at each other, confused. Daniel forced a laugh, brittle at the edges. "What protocol? You think calling someone is going to fix this?" Ariana didn't look at him. She didn't need to. Carla's voice came through warm, calm, efficient. "Understood. Running the sequence now. Corporate will receive the alert in 30 seconds. The room faltered. 30 seconds? Daniel's smirk thinned. You really expect us to believe you have access to something like that? You're bluffing. People like you don't get corporate protocols. The repetition of people like you echoed down the corridor, louder than his voice. Ariana lowered the phone slightly, not breaking eye contact with him. Behind Daniel, he didn't notice what the others had begun to notice, the subtle shift of the lobby screens. At first it was nothing, a flicker, a blink, a software refresh. Then the text appeared. Security override requested protocol, XI, executive verification, pending. Employees stiffened. A few stepped away from Daniel without realizing they had moved. Someone whispered, "What the hell? Who can trigger an executive override?" Another replied, "Only board level, or higher." Daniel's throat clicked as he swallowed, but he pushed forward anyway, refusing to lose face in front of the crowd. "This is fake. She hacked something. Intern checked the system logs." But the intern was already looking, and what he saw drained the color from his face. It's real." His voice trembled. "The system recognizes her device. It's authenticated at the highest tier." A hush rippled outward. Ariana ended the call. No flourish. No drama. Just finality. Then she spoke directly to Daniel for the first time since he'd insulted her. "You've mistaken silence for permission," she said quietly. "That was your last mistake." The room didn't breathe. Not because she was loud, but because power, real power, rarely needs volume. The lobby screens kept flickering, shifting from their usual rotation of company ads to the same pulsing banner. Executive override identity verification required. No one breathed. Even Daniel's confidence, loud, oversized, exhausting, wavered for the first time. A tiny crack, barely visible. But it was there. He tried to recover, voice shaking beneath forced bravado. "This doesn't mean anything. Anyone can spoof a device. Anyone can." Ariana stepped closer. Not aggressively. Just close enough that he realized she had stopped reacting to him, and had started studying him. It terrified him in a way he didn't understand. "Daniel," her voice was calm, but the room tightened around it. "Look at the screens." He didn't. He refused. Because he already sensed what they meant. But the employees behind him looked, and their faces changed. Slowly, completely. The intern whispered, barely audible, It's her. The system is asking to verify her." A manager from accounting stepped back. A receptionist lowered her phone. Someone else gasped softly, as though watching a skyscraper tilt. And then came the moment the whole room bent around. Ariana opened her briefcase, the same one they'd mocked, and pulled out a slim black folder embossed with a metallic insignia. She handed it to the intern. Not Daniel. Not the loudest voice, but the honest one. His hands shook as he opened it, eyes widening so fast he almost dropped the folder. He looked up at her, stunned. Then to the room. Then to Daniel. "She's..." His voice cracked. "She's not staff. She's not a visitor. She's..." He swallowed once. Hard. "Ariana Cole, majority stakeholder of Nexus Global. Board Authority Level 1. The sound that followed wasn't gasping or screaming. It was the sound of certainty imploding. Dozens of assumptions collapsing under the weight of a single truth. Ariana finally turned to Daniel, whose breath hitched as the reality landed. "You called me a servant," she said quietly. "In a building I own." The sentence sliced through the lobby like a guillotine. Daniel staggered back. Someone's hand flew to their mouth. The intern squeezed his eyes shut as if bracing for impact. Ariana didn't move, didn't smile, didn't revel. She simply let the truth settle into the space he'd tried to shrink her into, and it was bigger than he could ever fill. For a heartbeat, the lobby existed in two worlds. The world before her reveal, and the world after. The second one hit like a silent earthquake. The screens above the reception desk strobed again, this time displaying a new message in bold red. "Access review initiated, staff status under investigation." Whispers surged through the room. "What does that mean? Is this real?" "Oh my God," we laughed at her. Daniel stumbled backward until his shoulder hit the edge of a marble pillar. His face drained of color, leaving only the outline of arrogance collapsing in real time. This is a misunderstanding," he stammered. "She's making this bigger than it is." But the system didn't care about his voice. It cared about authority, and hers outranked his entire department. A soft chime echoed overhead. The employees froze as the security feed on the largest screen changed to show a live time-stamped log. Manager Daniel Hahn. Misconduct alert, pending review. Staff cluster. Behavior flagged. Witness logged. Executive entity. Recognized. A. Cole. Protocol XI Phase 2. Activated. A receptionist covered her mouth. Another took a step away from Daniel as though he were radioactive. Ariana didn't gloat. Didn't move. She simply stood as if she were watching the truth do what truth always does surface. Daniel tried one more desperate angle. He pointed at the intern. You must have triggered this. You're trying to sabotage me. But the intern stepped behind Ariana instinctively, almost protectively. No, he said, voice trembling yet resolute. The system knows who she is. You just never bothered to ask. Employees shifted, aligning themselves away from Daniel without meaning to. The tide had turned, and everyone felt it. A sharp electronic click sounded beneath their feet. Every staff badge in the mocking semicircle blinked yellow, then red. Access restricted. Effective immediately. A murmur crackled through the group, fear, confusion, disbelief. Daniel looked down at his badge, rapidly flashing red. No, this can't reset it. Someone reset it. No one moved. Ariana finally stepped forward, slow and precise, until she stood just close enough for him to feel the gravity of his own downfall. You built this moment yourself, she said softly. Word by word. Assumption by assumption. Mistreatment by mistreatment. Her voice didn't cut. It revealed. And now, she added, your consequences have arrived. Behind her, the screens pulsed one final time. Phase 2, complete awaiting executive decision. The lobby, moments ago loud with ridicule, fell into reverent, fearful silence. A silence that belonged to her. No one moved. Not the staff, whose badges pulsed red. Not the receptionist gripping the counter for balance. Not even the intern, who stood just behind Ariana like someone who had finally picked the right side of history. The only movement in the lobby came from the quiet rise and fall of Ariana's breath, steady, collected, dangerous in its composure. Daniel's voice cracked as he searched for footing in a room that no longer obeyed him. Miss Cole, I didn't know. If I had known... Ariana cut him off without raising a hand or a tone. That's the point, she said, her voice low and devastatingly even. You only respect people when you know their power. The sentence landed harder than the reveal itself. Employees flinched as though the truth had weight. Ariana stepped past him, positioning herself in the center of the lobby where her humiliation had begun. Not to reclaim the space, but to redefine it. Her gaze swept over every employee, each face stiff with the realization that they hadn't just witnessed misconduct. They had participated in it. When you thought I was nobody, she continued. You laughed. You stared. You agreed. None of you asked who I was. None of you asked whether what he said was true. You followed his tone, not the truth. She paused. The silence wasn't empty. It was pointed. I've spent my life walking into rooms where people assumed I was less, she said. But today I watched an entire floor confirm it before I spoke a single word. A woman near the back swallowed hard, cheeks flushing with shame. And yet, Ariana added quietly, your behavior isn't shocking. It's familiar. A faint tremor moved through Daniel's posture. You see, she said, eyes pinned on him, bias doesn't require malice, just comfort. You were comfortable humiliating me, comfortable mocking me, comfortable performing your prejudice. Her next breath steadied not for herself, but for the room. But comfort, she finished, is not a justification. It is a confession. The line hit like a truth the room had avoided for years. Ariana glanced at the flickering screens overhead as they shifted again. Phase 3, ready awaiting executive command. The employees looked at her with a mix of fear and awe. Daniel took one halting step forward. Please, don't do this. I made a mistake. Ariana met his plea with a stillness sharper than anger. You didn't make a mistake, she replied. You made a choice. She turned toward the center of the lobby, the exact spot where he'd called her servant. Now, the space belonged to her. All of you, she said softly, are about to learn the difference. The screens glowed brighter, pulsing like a heartbeat. The storm wasn't coming. It had arrived. The lobby screens brightened until the entire space glowed with a cold, clinical white. Ariana didn't look up. She didn't need to. She could feel the shift, the subtle hum in the floor, the tightening in the air, the way every phone in the room buzzed at the same time. Because Protocol 11 had reached its final stage, a soft chime echoed overhead. Phase 3. Executive action required. Authorized entity. A. Cole. Employees stiffened. Daniel's breathing grew shallow. Ariana finally lifted her phone again, tapping the screen once. "Carla," she said calmly. "Proceed." Her assistant's voice filtered through the lobby speakers, not intentionally broadcast, but overridden by the protocol's automation. "Understood, Miss Cole. Initiating personnel review. Confirming security flags." Daniel gripped the edge of the pillar as though it might anchor him to the job slipping from his hands. "What? What does that mean?" whispered one employee. The answer appeared on the screens. "Reviewing documented misconduct. Compiling witness logs. Cross-referencing internal complaints. Analyzing flagged behavior over the last 90 days. The intern swallowed. He'd heard whispers of an internal pattern, the way Daniel treated certain people, the way complaints were lost, the way HR shrugged when the victims weren't the right kind of employee. Ariana stepped forward, voice quiet enough to draw every ear. "Daniel," she said, "this isn't about one moment. It's about every moment you thought no one was watching." The system beeped. "Misconduct pattern confirmed. Recommended action, termination and access lockout." The color drained from Daniel's face so quickly it looked like the lights themselves had stolen it. "No, Ariana, Miss Cole, please. I have a family. I've been here 11 years. This can't be." Ariana didn't look away. "You built your career on intimidation," she said, "and you weaponized your authority against the people least able to defend themselves." She let that settle. "This isn't punishment. It's accountability." Carla's voice returned, crisp as glass. "Awaiting your final authorization, Miss Cole." The room held its breath. Ariana didn't raise a hand. She didn't stare Daniel down. She simply exhaled slow, composed as if releasing the last remnant of patience she owed him. "Execute," she said. The screens reacted instantly. Access revoked. Badge disabled. Employment terminated effective immediately. Daniel's badge went dark. Then his login alert chimed. Locked out. Someone gasped. Someone whispered, "It's over." Someone else stepped back, finally recognizing the magnitude of the power standing in the center of their lobby. Ariana didn't watch Daniel fall apart. She watched the room wake up. The moment Daniel's badge went dark, the lobby felt different. Like someone had lifted a curtain and let truth flood the room. He stared at the dead badge in his hand as if willing it back to life. But the silence around him wasn't sympathy. It was recognition. For the first time, the employees weren't looking at Ariana as an outsider. They were looking at her as the only person in the building who had ever held them accountable without raising her voice. The receptionist slowly lowered her hands from her mouth. A junior analyst adjusted his tie, ashamed of the smirk he'd worn minutes ago. Someone whispered, "We were part of this. We helped him." And then the shift happened. Not loud, not dramatic, just human. An older woman from HR, one who had stayed quiet for years, stepped forward, voice trembling. "Miss Cole, there have been complaints. About him, about others. They were never escalated. I didn't know who to trust." Ariana met her eyes not with pity, but with clarity. "You always trust the truth," she said softly, "even when it's inconvenient." The HR manager blinked hard, a quiet relief settling into her shoulders. Behind Ariana, the intern gathered his courage. "I should have spoken sooner," he said. "I saw patterns, the way he talked to certain people, the way he dismissed them. I was scared." Ariana turned to him, expression steady. "Speaking now still matters." His breath shook, a weight lifting off him. One by one, employees stepped out of the semicircle they'd used to corner her earlier. Not toward Daniel, toward her. A young woman approached, eyes wet. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "We all followed him because he was the loudest voice in the room." Ariana's reply was calm, almost gentle. "Loud doesn't mean right. It just means unchallenged. Her words settled into the lobby like a new foundation, something solid where something fragile once stood. Daniel finally found his voice, hoarse and desperate. "You're turning them against me." Ariana didn't look at him. "I didn't turn anyone," she said. They turned toward the truth. Behind her, the screens pulsed again. Staff retraining required. Leadership evaluation initiated. Culture audit scheduled. A collective inhale moved through the room. This wasn't just about Daniel anymore. It was about a system he had embodied, loud, unchecked, and comfortable in its bias. Ariana stepped into the center of the space, the same place she'd been humiliated moments before. And now, it was the place they gathered around. Not to judge her, to follow her. Because the room finally understood. She hadn't merely punished misconduct. She'd revealed it. And the revelation had changed them. The lobby, once a theater of humiliation, now felt like a courtroom where justice had quietly taken its seat. No one was laughing anymore. No one whispered. Even the air conditioning seemed to soften, as if the building itself understood the shift. Ariana stood at the center of the marble floor, the same spot Daniel had pointed at her, ordered her, diminished her. Now it was the place where her presence reshaped the entire culture of Nexus Global. She let the silence linger, letting everyone feel what they had created and what they had witnessed. Then she spoke, not loudly, not angrily, but with a clarity that wrapped around every person in the room. "This morning," she began, "you didn't fail because you didn't know who I was." A few employees looked down. "You failed because you thought you already did." Her gaze swept the staff, slow, deliberate. "You saw a black woman standing alone, dressed simply, without a badge, without an entourage, and you decided the story for me before I said a single word." A receptionist wiped a tear she didn't expect to shed. Ariana continued, voice steady as steel, warmed by sunlight. "Bias doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it laughs. Sometimes it points fingers and calls it procedure." Daniel closed his eyes, the truth landing heavier than any disciplinary action. "But today," Ariana said, "you learned something essential. Power doesn't always announce itself, but dignity always reveals who lacks it." A ripple moved through the room, quiet, electric, transformative. She lifted her chin a fraction. "I didn't come here to embarrass anyone. I came here to observe, to see who leads with integrity and who follows noise." The intern felt his knees soften. She wasn't talking to him directly, yet he felt seen in a way that steadied him. Ariana turned toward the screens, now glowing a soft blue. Protocol 11 complete. Culture reset initiated. Then she delivered the line that would replay in every mind long after she left the building. "I didn't raise my voice today," she said. "I raised the standard." The words fell like a verdict and a blessing at the same time. She closed her briefcase, nodded once to the intern, and began walking toward the executive wing, her wing, while the staff parted instinctively, creating a path for her they should have opened from the start. Not out of fear, out of recognition and respect. Behind her, the lobby remained silent, a place transformed by truth, accountability, and the quiet power of a woman who never needed to shout to be heard. The story wasn't about her authority. It was about the moment everyone else finally saw it.